Hello and a very warm welcome.
As we head towards the battlefront, there is a sense of anticipation.
The riots in Assam had opened up the existing fault lines that exist in the state. What are the steps that India is taking to develop infrastructure in this remote and inaccessible area? We came here to find out. I am Nitin Gokhale. Change, as they say, is the only constant in life. And so it has been in this 30-year journey of mine, from Telegram to Twitter, as I keep saying, between 1983 and now. Of course, there are other changes. From being a skinny 50 kg person at the beginning of my career, look where I have come, to about 74 kgs now. In 30 years, one has added these 24 kgs. I'm not so sure if the grey cells have increased as quickly and as substantially. But joining NDTV was the biggest challenge. Why? Because till then, pen and typewriter and a notebook used to be my constant companion. When I came to television, the need was to think visually. That was the biggest challenge. It wasn't easy, but thanks to all-round support from the organization and colleagues, especially camera people, I started thinking visually. 30 years ago, China opened its economy. Ever since then, the world has watched in awe China's rapid economic progress and peaceful rise. India and China, two ancient civilizations with historic ties. It's the first ever joint military exercise between the two countries taking place here. Troops of the Indian and the Chinese armies have overcome language and cultural barriers and perfectly executed the anti-terror mechanism that they had planned. In 1962, the gallant Indian soldiers fought the Chinese from these very bunkers. First Indian journalist to come to this part of China, we discover every day that the Chinese government is sparing no effort to bring this backward region at par with the rest of the nation. Beijing 2008 is going to be the biggest Olympics in history. But off camera, many young Chinese have raised the question, is the enormous expenditure for the Olympics really worth it? Getting access to Tibet in 2006, July and August actually was a great learning experience. Got stories from that part of the world, the roof of the world, which were not seen on Indian television till then. Traveling on the train to Lhasa, also called China's Dream of the Century, was an unforgettable experience. The Potala Palace in Lhasa, already a popular tourist site. In coming months and years, this palace is likely to see a massive influx of tourists thanks to the Qinghai-Tibet Railway, which is opening Tibet to the rest of the world like never before. As the first Indian TV team on this wonderful train, sometimes described as a modern-day engineering wonder, as opportunities kept coming up, I kept grabbing them with both hands. From Siachen to Andamans, For long, the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, which are closer to Indonesia than Indian mainland, have been regarded as an outpost of India rather than a strategic springboard. However, over the past few years, the thinking is changing. And from line of actual control to the line of control in Jammu and Kashmir, one kept traveling and bringing back stories and doing films for the organization and for own satisfaction. For over a month now, the army has intensified patrolling, not only in this sector, but all along the 700-kilometer long line of control. The reason? Over 25 incidents of firing by Pakistani soldiers on Indian positions all over the LOC since June. This is in fact a Pakistani post where you can see the movement of the night sentries, which is being observed by this soldier, and this looks as if it's daylight observation, although right now we are beyond midnight. In between, there were these exclusives, interviews with chiefs of the armed forces, ambassadors, high commissioners, sometimes people who had retired long ago but were influential. Air Chief Marshal N.A.K. Brown took over as the Chief of Air Staff almost a year ago, and yet he has refrained from giving one-on-one interviews to the media. This is the first interview he's doing for television on the eve of the 80th anniversary of the Indian Air Force. How has the year been like? You've been at the helm of the Air Force for more than a year now.
Well, Nitin, has been a very exciting year, a challenging year. It's not been easy, let me assure you that. A lot of hard work has gone into the building up of the Air Force, and we've been very satisfied with the results that we've achieved so far.
There are these infrastructure or terrorist infrastructure which still exists across the border, or is it also some of the local terrorists are coming up? How do you assess that situation?
It's a combination of a whole lot of factors. To start with, we have to understand that the infrastructure which supports and propels this entire proxy war across the borders is intact.
Army Chief General V.K. Singh will be hanging his boots on 31st of May. Let me start with the tenure that you have had, and it's been more than eventful and controversial. How do you look back on this 2 years plus?
Some controversies were raised or otherwise not by me, something which one started with, certain aims and other things. I think it has been good.
This is the aircraft from which President APJ Abdul Kalam is going to have a historic flight on Thursday morning. He is going to become the first president ever of this country to fly a fighter jet. Please tell us, how are you preparing yourself and what do you have planned for the...
Well, essentially we've planned to showcase the capability of the aircraft to the president, and the sortie profiling has been done keeping that in mind, and that will be our main objective.
And of course, the biggest of them all with Ajmal Jami, the Dalai Lama interview. He put us at ease. He also was mischievous in his answers. He was impish, in fact, which actually put me at an ease which I had never felt interviewing somebody of that stature. Thank you very much, sir, for talking to us at NDTV. And let me straight away ask you this question. Why is China so afraid of your philosophy and your stand?
I think difficult to say. I think one way is because they themselves, I think, not very strong self-confidence. They themselves is a little sort of fear. I think out of fear. Then, of course, I'm Tibetan. I usually telling people, people usually call me Dalai Lama of Tibet. Nobody say Dalai Lama of China's Tibet.
In between all this, there was the big chance of being on the real battlefield. The Elam War 4 in Sri Lanka between the Sri Lankan military and the LTTE, the most dreaded terrorist organization, which raged for 3 years between 2006 and 2009, was one big opportunity I got in life after coming to NDTV. Sri Lankan army troops advancing inch by inch deeper into LTTE territory. As the island nation's 25-year-old war enters its final and perhaps decisive stage, the fighting is intense. Since January, Sri Lankan troops have progressively pushed back the Tamil Tigers. Reporting from the real battlefield was, of course, a different challenge. Traveling there, getting permissions, trying to interact with a military which was not very well known to me, and again trying to fit in that reporting in the geopolitical context as well as the political and social context between India and Sri Lanka was a major challenge which one feels satisfied about that one didn't go wrong. The war has raged for over 18 months. The Sri Lankan army has made spectacular gains. The Sri Lankan army marched into this area and defeated the Tamil Tigers. This is now totally under the control of the Sri Lankan army. How the two prominent congressmen behaved during the emergency. Former Air Chief SP Tyagi is under the scanner of the CBI. The UAVs deployed by the Indian Air Force for the protection and security of the Commonwealth Games and the city of Delhi during that time. Sometimes people pointed out that you are not comfortable in the studios. Well, that's the way I am. Not comfortable in the studios, but extremely comfortable outdoors. Nearly 32 years ago, a group of firebrand boys had decided to take up arms to get justice for Assam after a meeting in this historical place. Kumta is a constituency which is in the district of Golaghat in Upper Assam. It is here, way back in 1985, that the Assam Gana Parishad was formed after the end of the Assam agitation. We've started our travel from the easternmost town of Dibrugarh and will travel through the tea country right down to the capital Guwahati and then go beyond up to places like Kokrajhar and Gosaigaon bordering West Bengal. If ever there was proof needed on how destructive the Brahmaputra can get, here it is in Romoria. Thanks to the opportunities that NDTV has given me, one has been to different kinds of fields. In the winters, at minus 40 degrees, in Ladakh. Hello and welcome to this special program coming to you from Eastern Ladakh. This area has been in the news for the past 7-8 months with reported increase in Chinese activity all along the line of actual control with India. The military therefore takes no chances. Patrolling on the Pangangso Lake that straddles the border is an important component in the border vigil. During an earlier visit, our team had a chance to experience the boat patrolling. We are on an army patrol boat on the Pangangso Lake that divides India and China's line of actual control. This lake has a 45-kilometer frontage with India and the rest with China. Very often, the patrol boats come face to face. Neither the remote location nor the hostile weather deters Indian soldiers. For them, duty comes first. Looking at the border personnel meetings between India and China, and also, of course, one major film that we did, 45 years of the India-China war in Tawang. Years ago, Tawang was in the middle of a border war between India and China. And that film, incidentally, is still being shown as part of the Sound and Light show at the Tawang War Memorial. Indian and Chinese soldiers keep meeting at the border point at least thrice a year. But the bonhomie at the border does not mask the eyeball-to-eyeball deployment from both sides. After years of hesitation, India has decided to raise more army formations and station state-of-the-art combat jets of the Indian Air Force in the foothills of Arunachal Pradesh in response to constant needling by the Chinese on the border both in Arunachal Pradesh and Ladakh. And then, of course, one of the other high points, revisiting Kargil 10 years after the actual conflict. "50 years ago, the Indian Army raised a new formation primarily to combat insurgency in the northeast. 5 decades since, it has not only combated insurgency in the northeast and Jammu and Kashmir, but more importantly, won the Kargil conflict for India in 1999. This is the story of the formation, the 8th Division that is forever in operations. Kumathang, tucked away behind a huge mountain feature, is an appropriate location for the headquarters of 8th Mountain Division. Ever since it was raised in 1963, this formation has mostly operated in the mountains and delivered results every time. Be it in the northeast or Kashmir Valley and beyond the borders as it did in 1971. In 1999, I had reported the Kargil war, or the conflict as it is called, for Outlook magazine. In NDTV, I revisited Kargil again with Jami, with Barkha, who had actually become a big star after reporting on Kargil for Star News and NDTV. Going back there rekindled so many memories. In popular imagination, the formation is, however, equated with the 1999 Kargil conflict. Captain Vikram Batra, Anuj Nayyar, Vikrant Thapar, and many other became household names for their daring exploits at impossible heights. "14 years ago this month, last of the Pakistani intruders were evicted from the heights of Kargil, Dras and Batalia, underlining the importance of 8th Mountain Division. Hastily rushed into this sector from Kashmir Valley, it took the might of the Bofors guns and the raw courage of the soldiers to earn a hard-earned victory in these forbidding heights. And also, one felt humbled at the courage and the bravery of our soldiers. Selfless, undemanding, and completely focused on their job. I wish all of us can do that at one point or the other." Northern Command remains Indian Army's most active formation, guarding two major borders with China and Pakistan, and spearheading the counter-insurgency operations against the proxy war by Pakistan in Jammu and Kashmir. Since counter-insurgency operations happen day and night, injured soldiers have to be rushed to Srinagar by helicopters. Largest and best equipped in the entire valley, the base hospital has saved hundreds of lives in the past decade, thanks to its dedicated team of doctors, specialists, nurses and other staff. So, what next? Like one of my early gurus, M.V. Kamath, said, "You're as good as your last story." So the journey doesn't stop. Whatever one has learnt has to be passed on. And one learns every day. Every day has to be a learning experience. That's something one has actually engraved on one's mind. Good morning, everybody. First of all, it's always a privilege to talk to peers, friends, young people. We actually are talking today about the Indian military, that institution which we revere, which we respect, but maybe some of its shine is coming off right now. But let me just give you a brief background and also tell you how vast the Indian military is and how well spread out and how much the kind of important job it does for the country. If I can continue to do that and keep the mistakes to the minimum, perhaps there's further 30 years to go in journalism. And I'm sure NDTV is going to provide that kind of a platform, not just to me, but to all others who come into its fold.